You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to Tuesday. Is it Tuesday? It's Tuesday. Welcome to Tuesday. We like to call it Taco Tuesday around here.
But more importantly, y'all know what today is, right? It's Taco Tuesday!
Yeah, it is. Taco Tuesday. I need a taco right now. I didn't have any lunch. All that was a smoothie for breakfast. I need a taco like right now. Somebody get me a taco. JP's on the board. Hey, buddy.
Well, you should have got a taco yesterday, Cinco de Mayo. Probably could have got one for
I did.
A meatloaf taco.
A meatloaf? Do they make meatloaf tacos?
I'm sure they do.
Well, no, John from Huntsville
I
likes
was just
meatloaf
about to
tacos.
say, I think John from Huntsville's had a couple.
Oh, my gosh. All right, hey, listen, it is indeed Taco Tuesday. We got a whole show laid on for you. No guests today. I have no guests planned. Y'all call in, give me your feedback all you want to. But I've got a triple dipper that's so full, I decided just to run with it. So, yeah, no guests, triple dipper, hit it.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. First out the gate, big doings, including a story that just broke on the internet like moments ago. Reshaping the military. Yes, indeed, reshaping the military. Are they? Yeah, they are. They really are. The Trump administration is truly reshaping the military from the debacle of leadership or lack thereof that we saw under the Biden administration, and I'm glad. And it kind of goes beyond even the Biden administration. They're actually reforming some things and streamlining operations, and it makes sense. Reshaping the military, number 1 on the Triple Dipper. Number 2, immigration machinations. Y'all, there's a lot going on in the world of immigration reform. And when I say that, I ain't talking about amnesties. I'm talking about getting rid of illegal aliens. I'm talking about the millions who streamed across our border. Did you hear the latest plan about, like, paying people to leave? It's something else. It's innovative. It's immigration machinations. That's number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, I didn't know what to call this, but I kept finding these statements being made by people in the public eye that were just literally saying it like it is. I mean, saying it like it is. And I thought, well, by golly, there it is. That's the Dipper, saying it like it is. I've got several. We're going to play audio clips. I've got clips of AG Pam Bondi. I've got audio clips from Trump. I've got a clip from L.A. Sheriff Alex Villanueva, and you're going to want to hear what he said about leaving the Democrat Party. All said and done, saying it like it is next, number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, let me jump on into the opening monologue. The Rightside Way monologue reminds you guys that every single day, the Rightside Way monologue brought to you by attorney Stan McDonald. Stan McDonald, partner at the law firm of Wilmer & Lee, practicing for over 30 years, a true conservative, and oh, by the way, the sponsor daily of the Rightside Way monologue, and I'll tell you more about him here in a few minutes. All right, I'm going to tell you a story today. And let me just start by saying, to lay the predicate for it, there's a thread of thought out there, a thread of thought, if you will, that you have to be pure in your positions to be allowed to participate in the process. What do I mean by that? Well, yesterday, and then later on in the show, we'll play a clip from it. Yesterday, I saw Alex Villanueva, the sheriff of Los Angeles County in California. He just switched to the Republican Party after decades as a Democrat. Is that okay? I mean, can we see that happen? Is it reasonable to believe that he really is one of us? And I have to ask, what does one of us mean? You see, I still hear people say, well, be careful. You know, Elon Musk used to be a Democrat. Yeah, but is he now? Is he helping or hurting? Well, be careful of RFK and Tulsi Gabbard because they were Democrats. Yeah, they were Democrats who bucked their own party, even sued their own party, and now they're doing everything the way I would want it done. It doesn't mean I trust their positions on everything, not at all. I don't have any illusions that any of these folks I just named are somehow dyed-in-the-wool, conservatives who've seen the light on every position. But I do believe they have joined my team, and the roles they've been given are going the way I would want them to go. All right, so before you think I'm watering down my standards, the answer is no, I'm not watering down my standards. I'm a Republican, sure, but I'm a conservative Christian first. And because I'm a conservative Christian, I look through that lens and I have my worldview shaped by those principles. And I find that, generally speaking, the Republican Party is more in line with my conservative Christian values, therefore, I'm a Republican. But I also saw time and again when I served in the State House that there were Republicans who differed from me on certain positions. I mean, we could stand side by side one day and then go toe to toe the next day. Generally, we were together, but sometimes we were not, and it's maddening. I mean, you'd like to believe that if you're on the same team that all things align, but they don't. I had fellow Republicans who were pro-life, but they were also pro-tax. I had fellow Republicans who were soft on abortion, but they wouldn't ever vote for a tax increase. And I saw Democrats who would occasionally cross the aisle and vote for something that no one else in their party would vote for, and you bet we took their vote. Well, here's the deal. What I'm saying is, sometimes the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Sometimes a vote or an effort from somebody who is not entirely lined up with me on every subject is still a friend for that moment. You can call them an 80% friend if you want to, but I'd rather have an 80% friend than a 0% enemy. And their help is still worth having. Their work is still worth doing. Their results are still worth applauding. I've heard it said that General William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army, once said, "I'll take $1 from the devil if I can use it for the God's work." Okay. So yeah, I'm an absolute constitutional Christian conservative, but if a former Democrat wants to help me fight progressives on a certain issue today, I will take that vote and use it to advance my cause. I'm saying all this because it triggered something when I heard a story that I had never heard before. A story from World War II, a story that really ought to be made into a movie, to be honest. Have you ever heard the story about the last battle at Castle Itter? The time when German and American soldiers actually banded together to fight the SS. Well, I hadn't either, but man, it's a good story. So sit back and listen, my friends, because this is history, and it happened exactly 80 years ago this week. So in May 1945, the war in Europe was almost over. Hitler and Mussolini were both dead. American and Soviet forces had already linked up, and the German government was about to formally surrender. And German soldiers were either trying to give up to the Allies, or in the case of diehards like the SS, they were trying to kill anyone they considered to be a traitor. Well, Castle Itter was a relatively modern fortification built in 1878 at the top of a hill overlooking the village of Itter in the Tyrol region of Austria. It had been a private estate, a hotel. Eventually, it came under Nazi control. And in 1943, Castle Itter was made a part of the Dachau prison network, but this was, unlike the rest of Dachau, this was not a death camp. Castle Itter became a prison for some of the Nazis' most important VIPs. So in Castle Itter, they had imprisoned French generals, 2 former French prime ministers, other politicians, a former French tennis star, believe it or not, who became a nationalist politician. There was a handful of Czech and Yugoslav partisans. Even Charles de Gaulle's sister was imprisoned at the castle. So as the surrender of Germany came closer, the guards abandoned the prisoners and just left them alone. But the word was, as the guard commander was leaving, he said the SS were coming and they would execute the prisoners. So the prisoners sent one of their own into a nearby village. He didn't find any Americans. What he found instead were 24 German regular army soldiers. And those soldiers were already contemplating, how do we surrender to the U.S. that's advancing into our area? Well, the prisoner convinced the German commander, who then realized, oh, Castle Itter, what a great way for me to gain favor with the Americans right before I surrender. So under a flag of truce, the German officer approached 4 American tanks from the U.S. 12th Armored Division, led by a Captain Jack Lee. The story goes that Captain Lee was standing there chewing on an unlit cigar when the German walked up, and he told him about Castle Itter. And Captain Lee decided to work with the man. So 1 small U.S. tank unit, a group of U.S. infantry, and 24 German soldiers all moved to Castle Itter and secured it together. 2 groups of enemies came together for the rescue of the prisoners, and they were none too soon because right after they got there and began to secure things, over 100 SS soldiers came out of the wood line nearby and marched on the castle, just within hours of them getting up their defenses. The SS had artillery, and they had a mixed group of rescuers holding the castle walls. Well, the prisoners armed themselves and joined the fight. So now you had German, French, American, Czech, and Balkan fighters all holding off an overwhelming Nazi force of diehard SS troops who were committed to their deaths while holed up inside a castle on a mountain. Think about that. It's crazy. And they were surrounded, and their communications were knocked out, It was the Alamo. And the battle raged. And the German officer was actually killed by an SS sniper. Let that sink in. The Germans were killing their own. The snipers were German. The man they shot was a German. It was all on the line now. Eventually, the Frenchman, who had been a famous tennis star before the war, he was the most athletic person they had. So he was chosen to make a suicide run to find help because all their communications had been knocked out. The Americans knew the rough position of where other U.S. forces might be, so the Frenchman ran out the gate. He ran through the battlefield under fire from the SS, and he made it overland to U.S. forces. Meanwhile, the SS began advancing on the castle. Well, that fight raged, and just as Captain Lee was ordering his weird conglomeration of fighters to fall back further into the castle's keep, the reinforcements actually arrived. American armor and infantry. They tore through the SS, who abandoned the fight, leaving their dead on the slopes around the castle. The Americans linked up with Captain Lee. The prisoners were all eventually repatriated to their home countries. The officer who died, the German officer Joseph Gengel, he was the man who had given his life while joining his former enemies to fight with his previous friends. Captain Lee was actually awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor for heroism under fire. But you have to wonder, what would have happened if Captain Lee had just taken the Germans prisoner instead of listening to their story about the castle? Nobody would have argued. They were German troops. Take them prisoner. It was war. They were the enemy. But at that particular moment, the enemy of his enemy became his friend. And Captain Lee took the time to align himself with someone else for the greater good. Look, now I know the German soldiers in that fight against the SS, they were still former Nazis, right? I know that if the roles were reversed and their side had been winning, they would probably not have aligned themselves with U.S. troops to fight the SS, right? I get it. That's not the point. Because you see, sometimes your situation dictates. Sometimes the hand up or the hand out can come from the least expected situations. The Bible's full of stories like that, allies in strange places. You had Rahab, the Canaanite woman who helped Israeli scouts at Jericho. You had foreign kings in the Bible who aligned themselves with Israel. You had the Egyptian pharaohs who God used to bring the Jews into safe haven. It happens. And by the way, it also happens in politics. I've seen it. We are watching right now as one of the most eclectic group of innovators has been brought together in one administration. You got business tycoons, former Democrats, lawyers, bankers, TV news personalities, old soldiers, and Gen Z influencers all working together to get something done. And do I trust all of them all the time? No. Why would I? But I do see right now that each one of them has been given a role for which each of them seems innately suited. And while I may be more conservative than most of them, I see good stuff happening. I see real change. What I see right now are at the very least a bunch of 80% friends. It's better than having a bunch of 0% enemies, right? I see broken stuff getting fixed. I see stupid stuff getting broken. And so far, I'm for it all. Because yeah, sometimes politics and war make for strange bedfellows. Sometimes the enemy of my enemy winds up being my friend, at least for a time, at least for a purpose. And that's a wrap for the Rightside Way. How about that for a crazy story? I think they ought to make a movie about it. I do. But think about it. The enemy of my enemy, my friend? Yeah. An 80% friend? Maybe. Do you still get something done? Well, apparently they did, and apparently you can other places, and Trump's doing it right now with his team. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just pulling pins on truth grenades. Just give me one. I'll pull that pin. All right, listen, text lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Call it or text it. Same number for both. Some of y'all are texting in already, and I appreciate it. Let me tell you real quick about attorney Stan McDonald. Stan McDonald, partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee. He's a 30-year veteran of the practice of law. Listen, Stan McDonald, I know him personally. I also know he's been in the mix on the policies and the politics as an absolute warrior for conservatism over the years. As much as practicing law, he is good at being a conservative. But as to being a lawyer, Stan McDonald, he has literally represented his clients in like thousands of real estate transactions over the years. He can stand up for you in any local, state, or federal court. I like to say if Stan McDonald's on your side, you're going to have no greater friend. Likewise, your adversary would have no greater foe. So yeah, if you want to get in touch with him, if you need a lawyer in North Alabama, I'm going to tell you how to reach him. You ready? Stan McDonald, law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man. Here's his phone number, 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald, 256-479-3020. And tell him you heard about it at Rightside Radio. Oh yeah. No representation made. The quality legal service we perform is a great quality legal service for all the lawyers. Bam. How you like me now?
You may have just earned your first 10.
Was that a 10?
That was pretty dang close.
Brother, I need a 10.
I give you a 10 for that one.
Thank you. Put applause on it or something. I mean, that's just like, we mark it down. This was May the 6th at 2:27 p.m. Phil got a 10 on that stupid disclaimer.
After months and months of hard work.
Let's see what we got here. Allie Mathis texting in. Hey, Allie. Says, excellent monologue, Colonel Williams. We saw that very powerful enemy-friend dynamic at work in Iraq. Yes, we did. And it was mind-boggling. From Iraqi generals to teenage interpreters, if I hadn't seen it firsthand, I would not have believed it. Yes, on a regular basis. Saw it in Afghanistan, too. You're right. John C. from Madison says, excellent monologue. I'm a huge World War II junkie. Probably have a couple of hundred documentaries. I've actually heard that story before, but I'd forgotten about it. Thank you for the story. Thank you, John C. And listen, John C., by the way, if you know of a documentary on this or a movie for that matter, I'm not aware of it, please let me know. I want to catch that.
Another great example of the enemy becoming your friend. I mean, Huntsville knows it best. Werner von Braun, the guy that literally put us on the moon.
Oh yeah,
was a Nazi. Like not just a high level Nazi. And so it's highly controversial too. Like with all the Nazis that came over, the scientists. But I mean, that's the perfect example of it. I mean, that's how we beat the Soviets in the space race. So.
That's absolutely right. And we still to this day have the Von Braun Civic Center.
Yep, still named after him.
Jerry from Decatur checks in and says, love your show, but especially the monologues. Airborne. Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate you. Airborne all the way. All right, listen, we're going to kick off. Speaking of airborne, we just had a Supreme Court decision on a U.S. military-related issue. So I planned today's Dipper. Number one is going to be called Reshaping the Military. We'll kick it off here right after the break. And then I'm loving that. I told JP, I said, the reality is sometimes this show is so on the money it scares me. But we just nailed this Dipper because right before we start the show, bam, Supreme Court issues a ruling on transgenders in the military. I'll tell you about that when we get back from the break. Right now, John from Huntsville saying, Phil, fantastic monologue. Also, did you hear the prices of eggs are finally going down? By the way, JP, your Braves are finally winning games again.
We figured out how to do it once again. We're chipping away, man.
Bruce from Springville says, it's amazing how God can use anyone to save lives, even to ally the U.S. and the Wehrmacht troops. Yes, it is. And I got a few other texts that I'll read when we get back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Whew. It goes from Huntsville back on over towards Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back to Gadsden, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the border from there to what we get to call once again Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. And that's just the radio. Then there's a whole huge online audience we have in all four corners of the United States, and we appreciate you. Text lines are still open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text it or call it. I got a few already. Let me see what we got here. There's one I saw further down that I didn't get to. Where was it? I thought it was Thomas. Oh, he texted twice. Thomas from Athens said, Colonel, great monologue again. Just as Christians can agree 80 to 90% of the time, especially on most of the really important things, and likewise conservatives, Christians or otherwise, it seems President Trump has gathered together the right way. Let's all fight together. And then he came back with a second text. He said, von Braun used huge money to develop V1, V2s during the war, actually keeping Hitler from spending enough money on their jet plane program, and kept that program lagging behind. Therefore, Allied air power succeeded. That's interesting. I've heard before that von Braun was not really all in on the cause, so to speak. He was more like trapped in the moment, but that he sort of put some bugs in the overall programs to make it more difficult. Still, though, the V1, V2 rockets killed a lot of people. He says, by the way, I worked at MSFC as a student employee, low level, and met Dr. von Braun on the elevator. He said he was amazing in so many ways. How about that? That's very cool. That's a firsthand memory. That's cool. Thanks, Thomas. Last one before I go to the materials. Dave from Capshaw says, I believe there were 2 movies about Castle Itter. I've not seen either one. I need to look that up. Okay, we'll check it out. Thank you very much. Listen, there ought to be a documentary. That's just a cool story. How about that? When German soldiers and American soldiers and a bunch of, rabble from different countries banded together to fight the SS in one of the last battles of the war. At a castle, no less. Just kind of cool.
It's crazy. Like, the other story that's cool like that is when the Christmas Day armistice where they, World War I, where they came across and played soccer for a day. I
did a whole monologue on that one time.
It's just like, we're wanting to kill each other, we can play soccer. You know, it's crazy. That's how, the soldiers in the battle, and sometimes they're like, wait a second,
Do you know that just a few years ago on the 100th anniversary of that event, they held a German and English soccer game just to honor that moment.
Really? Yeah. It's great story.
Very cool. All right, listen, we're going to jump on into the topics. I know this audience, you guys are extremely military-minded. We've got a bunch of folks out there that are either supporters or participants or contractors or in green suits right now. So this first one I've got here is, I call this dipper Reshaping the Military. I was talking to someone just a couple days ago who's still on active duty now, and they said the memorandum is out. It's a structural redesign right now of the military in many ways. There are programs that are being axed, legacy programs. There are realignments of force structure. They are consolidating commands. And in a minute, I'll tell you more about the fact that we also have a brand new directive as of yesterday, which was what sparked me doing this today, from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, which I'm sure has the buy-in from the president, to basically cut the number of generals and admirals by like 20%. What they're doing by doing that, I'll say it right now, what they're doing by doing that is they're getting away from the notion of having top-down military so burdensomely heavy that it's like you have bureaucracy in the military. Now, by the way, it's so large there will always be some measure of bureaucracy. But they're getting back to where the rank and file is considered to be more the focus. So we're going to see fewer generals, fewer admirals, fewer flag officers, basically. And I don't know that's going to be a problem. We've got way more right now than we had on a pro rata share in World War II, and that was with a full mobilization. Okay, so all that to say, there's a lot of things happening with the military, and some of you guys are experiencing it. I do have someone that I'm close to right now who is questioning whether or not the program they've been working on at Redstone is going to continue to be there. And I don't know. It may not be. Okay. But we just had a ruling handed down. So I got a story right here that I hold in my calloused former paratrooper hands. CBS News, just about 10 days ago. Trump asked the Supreme Court to let him enforce the transgender military ban for now. All right, so just to back you up, what happened here was, as one of Trump's policy positions, was that as a commander-in-chief and as the policy maker for the United States, that President Trump was not going to have transgenders serving openly in the U.S. military. It's deemed to be a readiness issue. It's deemed to be a morale issue. And I get it. I mean, it is. It's extremely disconcerting for someone to walk into their barracks and have someone of the opposite sex who claims to be what they're not taking a shower with you. It just is. It's also extremely disconcerting, oh, by the way, when you're deploying and you realize that as a deployment roster is being put together, that battle roster does not include so-and-so. Why isn't so-and-so going? Well, so-and-so's just started their hormone therapies, and they're non-deployable for a whole freaking year. Well, why did they get to just elect that and not deploy and basically use the taxpayers' dollars through the military to pay for their transition, and I got to go to war? Well, that's not a reasonable, that's a morale killer. That's a readiness issue. Okay. The lower courts said, nope, you can't have that policy. Because, you know, Judge Anna Reyes, she knows more about military readiness than Trump ever will. Her position was that it was in some way denying a constitutional right. But there's not been a ruling on the merits, so let me just rephrase. There's not been a ruling on the merits, but the judge did enjoin the Trump administration from moving forward on that policy. Okay, so now you can't do it? You mean a judge says the commander-in-chief can't be the commander-in-chief? Well, you know, you can as long as we agree with you. Well, this judge is actually an activist herself. That Judge Anna Reyes has been a rabble-rouser in her off time for a long time. She's openly gay herself. She doesn't believe in there being two genders, and she's the judge on the case. Okay. She deemed that the plaintiffs, 7 transgender soldiers, had a reasonable expectation of prevailing on the merits of their case. So she stopped Trump from being able to put it in place with one of those nationwide injunctions we've been seeing so much about. Holy crap. Can you imagine? You're the commander-in-chief. It's the military. And you're told you can't set readiness levels where you think they should be. You can't set standards. All right. It went to a 3-judge panel at the Circuit Court of Appeals. That judge panel did not agree to lift the injunction. So basically, they stayed enjoined. I said all that. I feel like I'm talking in circles. I said all that. But on April 24th, the Trump administration argued before the Supreme Court that banning transgender people through the military is something that should be allowed to take effect, and that if you keep in mind, Trump had already done it in his first term. It was Biden who had put him back in. All he's doing is putting things back to where he'd been before. There's legacy here, and that it's basically gender dysphoria creates a constraint on the ability for readiness. Today, brace yourselves, the Supreme Court agreed with President Trump. Can I have a hallelujah? You need to do that again because that was too low.
My apologies.
We did. Story broke just a little while ago, right before I went on the air. Supreme Court stays the lower court ruling allowing the Trump transgender ban to proceed. Now, let me clarify, they did not rule on the merits of the case. That has not happened yet. The case can still proceed at the lower court level, but in the process of doing so, it will not be under an injunction, and the Trump administration is allowed to go forward with this policy. It's like, man, I mean, just all of a sudden we're allowed to do something? Really? Well, that's a win. That's a near-term win, but it's still a win. And so that's just happened. The High Court ruling is a near-term victory, says Fox News, for the White House, even as it did not address the underlying merits of the case. You can imagine it was Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson who were not in agreement. But the rest of the court said, yea, go ye therefore. And so they did.
So now can we eventually get a ruling on the merits of the case? I assume that is coming.
Now it goes back down to the lower court level. This is what's called an interlocutory appeal, which means an appeal in the middle of the proceedings. Now it goes back down, and they will have to proceed forward on the merits of the case and then try the case on, I guess, its constitutional grounds. Then I guarantee it's going to go back up through the appeals process.
Yep.
In the meantime, those plaintiffs they're out.
But like you said, in the meantime of all of that proceedings, I mean, it's going to take a while. Trump can actually enforce, what he wanted to enforce while that's being done. So I think that's a big victory, because this is not victory. Like that. That's a big time period where the proceedings have to take place, where they have to rule on the merits or whatever. It's in the meantime, to not be able to be commander in chief would be outrageous.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think what we're looking at here is you're looking at a year or more before this thing ever proceeded. Now, will they stay in the case? I don't know, but I suspect that they probably will, because they're going to try. The plaintiffs in this case are going to try and fight it so they can set a precedent for future generations. And they'll fight it, saying that readiness. But here's the thing. I've said this before, but if you want to impress your friends by the water cooler at work, say, well, it goes down to BFOQs. Remember that? BFOQs. Every job in the world is bound to not discriminate. I say world, United States, is bound to not discriminate on things like race, gender, pregnancy, and religious accommodations. You're not allowed to tell somebody, I won't hire you because you're a Christian. I won't hire you because you're pregnant. I won't hire you. You can't do that. Beyond that, you have to look at what else is there. All right. The transgender argument is trying to say that they are a protected class, and they're not. Okay, that aside, here's the thing. BFOQ, it stands for Bona Fide Occupational Qualifications. And what that basically means is, if you want to be a fireman, you can't be a paraplegic. I'm sorry. You can't be in a wheelchair and climb a ladder. So you have to be able to meet certain physical standards. If you want to be, I don't know, a football player, you have to be able to run the 40. There are occupational qualifications that get you in the job. Well, if you're non-deployable because you're going through gender transition surgeries and taking yourself off the deployment list, doesn't that mean you're not qualified for the job?
It should.
Yeah.
It very much should. But I mean, like you said, the military is not some participation thing so that you can be a glass breaking whatever. Like, our nation quite literally relies on our military. And I don't know if these activist judges don't grasp the reality of combat or whatever, but it's not some, like I said, glass breaking, first transgender to do that. Like, no, none of that crap in the military, because our lives depend on it and other soldiers' lives depend on it. It has no place in it, no.
Meritocracy is not just how well you want to do the job, it's how well you can do the job.
Especially when lives depend on it.
That's exactly right. All right, take me to a break, brother. We'll come right back. I'll tell you more. We're talking about reshaping the military. I got a stack of stuff, man. You guys stay tuned. We're going to tell you. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. John C. from Madison, texting in, says, my father-in-law worked at NASA for 31 years. He did work with von Braun. Wow, how about that? So the Apollo program and also Space Shuttle program, some of his experiments went up on the Space Shuttle. He worked at NASA before it was called NASA. That's just very cool. Thank you, John C. Appreciate you. If you got a picture of your dad with von Braun or anything like that, text it over. I'd love to see it. Mark from Red Bay said, I worked for a company once where a production manager told a guy, I can't tell you I won't hire you because I don't like the way you won't, I can't tell you I won't hire you because I don't like the way you look, but I can tell you I won't hire you. Understood.
Why can't you say that? Like, I don't know. I feel like you should be able to say, I don't like how you're dressed for this interview. I'm not going to hire you.
Well, you know what? I think you can.
Yeah.
I think there are some things you can say. Now, you can't say, I don't like the way you look because of your skin color.
Yes. Yeah.
But you can say, well, sir, it's apparent to me that you don't understand the professionalism involved here because you came in dressed like a hobo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You come in looking like Joe Snuffy the rag bag and you want me to give you a job. By the way, you were 5 minutes late.
Mm-hmm.
I had a job interview once at a former law firm I was at. I had a job interview. I was in charge. I was the managing, attorney. So I had to hire secretaries and all that kind of stuff. So I had somebody come in. We put an ad out. We're looking for someone, and this person came walking in, and they were like dressed in scrubs, like they're a nurse or something. I don't know. She comes walking in. She looked like she really didn't care. She was 5 minutes late. And she said, I'm just here to find out more about it. I'm not sure I really want this job. And I said, well, I'm not sure I want to spend time with you.
Yeah.
And she goes, well, I said, you want to talk or don't you? You were 5 minutes late and you're not even dressed for an interview. And she goes, well, we can talk. And I said, no, I just don't think it's necessary.
That's certainly a way to go about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably not the best way.
I don't advise it.
No.
Okay, all of you listening right now,
yeah.
I don't advise it. But yeah, that was something else. All right, back on the topic. Reshaping the military. So I've got a piece right here that was put out yesterday. On defense.gov. You know why? Because it's an official statement. So I am keenly aware as I read this that I'm reading their side of the story. But I agree with it. So there's that. Defense.gov, the headline is, or the title of it is, Defense Secretary's First 100 Days of Delivering on Promises. Okay, so this is their press release. This is their statement of what they believe they've been accomplishing. I get it, but you know what's interesting is I agree because I actually see it. The things that they're citing in here are not hard to find. They're real. And there's no puff in here. There's no puffery. This is like a compilation of, well, I did see that. Oh, I saw a story on that. Oh, I talked about the show one day. And they're all in one place right now. So Pete Hegseth, his office put this out as Secretary of Defense on the effort to reshape the U.S. military, which is where I got the name for today's Dipper. Peace through strength is the primary, he said. By doing that, they're going to be, quote, here's his words, restoring the warrior ethos, rebuilding the military, reestablishing deterrence. All right, so what have they done? Let's remind you of a few things. First of all, warrior ethos. Listen, I think anybody who's been in the military knows that's actually a real thing. That's called morale. That's called why do we do this? That's called who are we? That's not just I've got the ability to break down my M4 rifle and put it back together blindfolded. That's not that. It's not just a question of whether you can shoot. It's a question of do you know why you shoot? It's a question of do you understand the game on mentality that comes from being a member of the U.S. military? So that warrior ethos, he said this, Hegseth did. When he put out the statement that says we will return to the warrior ethos, he said we are American warriors. We will defend our country. Our standards will be high, uncompromising, and clear. The strength of our military is our unity and our shared purpose. So immediately after he did that, here's one of the things that happened. He ordered a rapid force-wide review of military standards related to physical fitness, body composition, and grooming. What he found was standards had slipped in the last 4 years especially, greatly. So he reinstituted new standards for physical fitness, and he required a leveling of standards. If you remember this, we talked about it about a month ago, a leveling of standards in the combat arms. And for those who aren't familiar, in the U.S. Army, infantry, armor, those kind of things, those are called the combat arms. If you're a female in the combat arms, you now have to do the same things that a man does. It's just it's the job qualification. There's a whole lot of this, and I'll get into more specifics in a minute, but they are reshaping the U.S. military. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Welcome to hour number 2 on a Taco Tuesday. Yes, it is. We got plenty to talk about, and I'm still in number 1 of the Triple Dipper, Reshaping the Military. I was in this thing, I'll stay in it for a minute. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth put out something yesterday talking about the first 100 days of delivering on promises about the military. Here's some things they did. Okay, so the first thing they did was they began to assess standards, and they assessed basically looking at people's body composition. Like, do we have people who are not meeting height weight standards? That's a thing. I get it. And listen, I have gone through the tape test multiple times in my life. I just do. I mean, and I was never overweight. I just was basically, the bottom line is muscle weighs more than fat. Let's put it that way. So I'd always get taped just to prove that I really could do the 75 push-ups I just did. But that's not the way everywhere. We're seeing a lot of people who are just allowed to continue on, allowed to not meet the standards, and that's changing. And it should. We also saw, believe it or not, grooming become an issue. There was a relaxing of the standards during the Biden administration that really got kind of ridiculous. And so they're going back to the idea of a military that has what we call stronger, more disciplined, uncompromising, clear standards. And I'm all for it. Because when you go to take the high ground, when you go to take the hard fight, when you go to the hard places to do the hard things, you want to know that the people who are with you have a measure of discipline. And discipline, you may look at it and go, what's a haircut got to do with taking the hill? It's called discipline. When you innately have the standards to the smallest degree, then they add up to compile to being able to do the things at the larger degree. Hegseth also did this. They immediately instituted a policy of saying those who had lost their careers because of the ridiculous overreaching COVID vaccine mandates, who were kicked, 8,000 members of the military were kicked out. 8,000, active and reserve, involuntarily separated for refusing to meet the vaccine mandates. Under Hegseth, they've been invited back in. He's trying to quickly reinstate those who want to join, giving them back pay and even reinstating their rank. So you can have a 3-year, 4-year break in service. Maybe you got out as an E6, you come right back in as an E6. And oh, by the way, we'll pay you for the time you missed. We're sorry that happened. That's honorable. So what they're saying there is, we recognize what happened to you. We're trying to make it right. We want to make you whole. And that's honorable. And I see that as being a great way forward. He also got away from what he calls divisive initiatives, basically CRT, DEI, all that crap. In fact, it even put out the word, we're not going to be celebrating, this National Heritage Month, that National Heritage Week, this special Pride Day. We're not doing all those things anymore. He said, we're going to celebrate people for their service. We're not going to celebrate them because of their characteristics. And I'm digging that, because we should not be having gay pride parades on post. We should not be having, just stopping everything so that we can celebrate what one demographic has as opposed to others. What else do we have? I mean, the military is being reshaped. Recruitment and retention through the roof. We have now seen all 5 military service branches meet their recruiting goals, which they were not making for the last couple of years. And 4 of them went beyond all of last year's performance already, and we're only halfway through the year. It's huge. Then he started strengthening alliances and posturing with our strategic postures around the world. Meeting with NATO, reaffirming our commitment to NATO, but also encouraging our European allies to kick in their portion to a higher degree. He had bilateral meetings with Australia, Japan, the Philippines, Saudi Arabia, the United Kingdom, El Salvador, France. Basically what he's doing is he's strengthening these relationships with like over a dozen international counterparts. By the way, do you remember seeing the Secretary of Defense do this much in the last administration?
I couldn't even tell you how many times I saw. His name really just blanked in my. Yes,
Lloyd Austin.
That's proof right there. I couldn't even remember his name off the top of my head. I think the first big story of his that I saw was when he went AWOL.
Yeah,
and that was it. Like the only other times I saw him was like meaningless little press briefings where he said nothing. And no, I don't remember anything consequential that he did.
You know he was an Auburn grad?
I knew he was from Alabama, but that's about it that I knew about him. So.
I think he was probably one of the most forgettable secretaries of defense we've ever had.
He was I don't want to say DEI hire because I think,
I think he was.
I think he was an identity politics, hire to have. We got a black defense secretary.
He was a glass ceiling breaker.
Yes.
But he really wasn't because we'd already had Colin Powell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like but that was the Biden administration. Don't hire them for what they can do. Hire them for what you want them to look like. Over and over. Look at this one. We got this first of this with that first of that. Yeah, but what kind of job are they doing? That's part of the meritocracy piece.
He wasn't going doing PT with the guys like Hegseth is.
Are you kidding?
No,
he was too busy wearing a mask and a face shield.
Yeah.
So yeah, and there's I will say this: Lloyd Austin had a long, pretty decent career, but there's some reason to believe too that some of what happened when I believe he was at CENTCOM didn't go real well. And it makes you wonder, how did he become SecDef? All right, anyway. Also, by the way, cutting back on spending. So, yes, we're seeing a larger defense budget, but we're also seeing DOGE getting into the Pentagon and finding $6 billion in potential savings. $6 billion in potential savings. And then we had, securing the southern border. And then we had, by the way, Yemen. Now, I didn't see it. You said you saw a press discussion today with Trump in the Oval Office. What did he say about Yemen?
So he was with new Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, and he was asked by the press about the Houthis. And apparently Trump said that the Houthis called and surrendered. And
Houthis called and surrendered?
That's what he said.
We picked up the phone. It was the Houthis.
Yeah, he said that they don't want to keep fighting, that they'll stop bombing our ships. So he said that we're done bombing Yemen as of now. So that's of today.
Well, if that's the case, that would be something.
That would, yeah.
Here we are watching the Houthis. By the way, they got bombed by Israel today.
Yes.
So we pounded the crap out of them, and they're going to quit shooting at ships now?
According to Trump, he claims that they waved the white flag and said, we're done if y'all stop bombing us. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't see anything on Fox when I was doing a quick scan. Would you, while I'm talking through the rest of this stuff right here, would you see what you can find on that?
I can find
If you find anything on that, that'd be cool. I'd love to. In fact, if you can find even an audio clip on it, that'd be hilarious. Here's another thing. I tell you what, I like this. So I'm on the National Board of Advisors for an organization called STARS. It's an organization that is committed to the idea of getting wokeness out of the military and celebrating the idea of putting the warrior ethos back in place. So Senator Tim Sheehy, if you don't know him, he is a brand spanking new senator. He's also a former Navy SEAL from Montana. And Sheehy just wrote a piece that was published 3 days ago saying the first 100 days of putting warfighters first. And he says when he met Pete Hegseth in early December ahead of his confirmation, he asked him one simple question: are you going to have the backs of our warfighters? His answer was an unequivocal yes. And he said, basically, the Biden administration left everything in a state of disrepair. But he's been watching as a former SEAL. He's a Republican, I get that. But he's been watching as a former SEAL, a guy who was in the ranks as a warfighter. He is watching everything, and he talks about it. I'm not going to try and just say everything he said. But just talked about what he's been doing and the fact that they're restoring the U.S. military in such a way. He said this. He said, recruitment is on the rise, terrorists are on the run, and most importantly, our warfighters know they have a president and a defense secretary who has their backs. That's a great summary right there. Did you find anything?
I got an audio clip about a minute long if you want to hear
it. What time we got? Yeah, I'll tell you what. Let's just see what it says.
We had some very good news last night. The Houthis have announced that they are not, or they've announced to us at least, that they don't want to fight anymore. They just don't want to fight. And we will honor that. And we will stop the bombings. And they have capitulated but more importantly, we will take their word. They say they will not be blowing up ships anymore. And that's what the purpose of what we were doing. So that's just news. We just found out about that. So I think that's very, very positive. They were knocking out a lot of ships going, as you know, sailing beautifully down the various seas. It wasn't just the canal. It was a lot of other places. And I will accept their word, and we are going to stop the bombing of the Houthis, effective immediately. And Marco, you'll let everybody know that.
Okay, that's huge. If that's the case, then we just bloodied their nose and they decided to stop shooting at ships. And what that does is not just say we won, it puts world commerce back into a better place as we're dealing with tariffs and all that. World commerce is going to be able to get right-sized again and not have to sail around the Horn to avoid the Houthis.
He also mentioned he's going to the Middle East, I think, tomorrow.
Trump is?
Yeah. So he also mentioned that he's got a massive announcement. I mean, he says everything's massive, but he claims that this is like one of the bigger announcements he's had before he's going to the Middle East tomorrow. So I don't know.
It's huge.
I don't know what that's concerning. But I mean, if the Houthis just surrendered, supposedly to Trump, and he's got another big announcement, it could hopefully be good signs in the Middle East. But fingers crossed for that.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. And you know what? If that's the case, then what we just saw was the Trump policy actually worked. If the Houthis are going to say, we're done, we're not going to do it anymore, well, guess what? They were shooting under Biden and nothing changed. 48 days later, Trump starts pounding the crap out of them, and next thing you know, boom, they're done. That would be, if that holds true, that's a win. All right, we get back from this break, I'll tell you about a couple more things and kind of wrap this up. But you're looking at some serious structural changes to acquisitions, to military force structure, and even to generals. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. We are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. That's crazy. I'm sitting here looking, and I just looked up and realized that the Fox News screen that we have up in the Will Cain show is on, and they're basically doing the same dipper I'm doing. I sometimes think they watch our show to see what we're doing.
I think Will Cain has a producer that listens to our show, and just
Just saying, I'll do it for half his paycheck. But yeah, they're literally talking about all the same things. Okay, hey, listen, let me wrap this up for you. I got one.
Sorry, I had to. Did you see that 100% negative coverage from mainstream media?
Oh yeah, Hegseth.
How do you 100%?
100%.
That is insane.
They have never said a positive thing about him at all. They don't even like his hair.
That's a badge of honor, I'd say.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Fox News has a piece that I've got in my calloused former paratrooper hands that Hegseth has just, as of yesterday, ordered a reduction in general officers in the military. I told you that, but here's the thing. There's currently 44 four-star generals or admirals, all right? Four-star flag officers, making a ratio of about 1 general to 1,400 troops, compared to the ratio we had during World War II of 1 to 6,000. So we're looking at a complete reduction. They're talking about a minimum 20% reduction in four-star generals and flag officers in the active duty, as well as a 20% reduction in the National Guard. Listen, we're getting rid of bureaucracy. That's what it sounds like. And then there's this. Hegseth has now ordered a sweeping Army overhaul and consolidation. So, okay, what's happening here? I won't try to summarize the whole article. I'll just tell you this. We're not looking at business as usual. That's the point. We are not looking at business as usual. They have decided that they will wind up taking certain commands, like, for instance, I think we're looking at Army Futures Command, Training and Doctrine Command, being combined with what's called FORCECOM, Forces Command, and U.S. Army North, U.S. Army South. They're basically doing a merger of major commands. That alone is going to be cutting the number of generals. But we're also looking at building a leaner, more lethal force, not cutting back on force structure per se, but then they're getting rid of programs like this. I saw this and I thought, well, that was almost a given, I think. Did y'all see that last year? Those of you in acquisitions know the deal. The Army came out with what's known as the M10 Booker light tank. The M10 Booker. It looks like a miniature tank. That's not a tank. You can't call it a tank. Well, it's got a big turret with a gun. What is it? Oh, it's a fast-moving infantry troop carrier with a tank-like turret. Okay. It was designed to put, I get it, it was designed to put armor into a lighter mode. But how light was it really? I mean, the bottom line is this. The Army just canceled it. Under the Trump administration, the Army looked at that and said, you know what? It's $1 billion program. And it's just really taking, over where the Bradley and the Stryker already are. So we're getting rid of the M10 Booker. Okay, that just went away. So they are not afraid to make moves. They are not afraid to rattle cages. They are not afraid to enforce standards. They are not afraid to say, not you, but listen, more of that. They're not afraid to say, I'm sorry, we're not going to mollycoddle you anymore. And then they came out with the sex-neutral fitness standards, which I don't think I need to go into again because I already talked about it. But I've got a whole stack. Listen, if you're watching online, look at the amount of paper I've got just on Dipper 1. I'm a lawyer. We can burn some paper. But that being said, I'm for it. I'm loving what I'm seeing. Loving it.
And I'll just say the 100% negative coverage, they wouldn't be doing that for nothing. So, Hegseth's got to be doing something good if he's getting 100% negative coverage, and they jump on anything they can on him, like Signal Gate and all that. If he wasn't doing such a good job, I mean, they wouldn't be going after him so hard, I'd say.
I would totally agree. Mm. In fact, I would say that's almost the given right there. That's the giveaway. That's the canary in the coal mine right there. We got a thing going. They hate Hegseth. He must be doing something right. Mm-hmm. John C. from Madison talking about the fitness test. He says, I used to take the tape test constantly, but my 19-inch neck definitely helped. Said I'm 5'7", 190 pounds. My PT scores were approximately 80%. I was a long-distance runner, never fell out of a run. 2001, I got called up for Saudi Arabia. I was healthy. When I came back, I was diagnosed with diabetes. I had to medically retire in 2010. Man, I hate that. He said, if trans people can stay in with all their hormone therapies, why couldn't I stay in with diabetes? Both of them need lifelong care. John C., you ask a fair question. By the way, thank you for your service. And yes, I totally get it. I'm 6'2", 220. Worked out this morning. Feel good. But being 6'2", 220, when they say you have to be no more than 6'2", 209, was always a thing. But you know what? Max the PT test. Throw the tape on me. I don't care. Mike from Florence says, it used to be that all those standards applied to sports. If you weren't good enough and or in good enough physical shape, you didn't get in. The left tried to change that in women's sports, and they tried to change it in the military, Mike. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Enough of that. Move on. Phil Williams will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Have mercy. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all don't talk about this show. I mean, it goes from like Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, down to that loveliest little village on the plains called Auburn. Straight across the border from there to what we now get to once again call Fort Benning. And then, oh, by the way, big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. And that's just the radio. It's not to mention the fact that we got listeners everywhere on the online streaming. By the way, speaking of the online streaming, let me just encourage you, if you have not done so, check out our website, rightsidemedia.org. You can watch the show live on video there, or you can go get us on YouTube or on X or on Facebook. Listen, we're all over the place, but if you want to live stream the show, you can do it just on your phone. All right? But it gives you a look inside the studio, and at the same time, the audio quality is just as good as you'll get anywhere else. But we would love to have you check out our onlines. Do me this favor, though. It means a lot to us. We're a growing company. And if you go to one of our platforms and it has either a like or a subscribe or a follow kind of option, please do. Because what that does is it gives the platforms an indication that we should be allowed to do more on their platform. We get to grow, basically. And the only way we grow is for all of you to click on it and give us the opportunity then to do that. No cost to you, but it certainly means a lot to us. So yeah, Rightside Media, that's us. Check it out. One quick text. Matt from Madison says, you ought to try Chris Salcedo and Newsmax, not Will Kane. Okay. Thanks. I like the Will Kane show, but I get to see it. I don't get to hear it because it's always on while I'm on.
That's the one we get to watch every day.
He does have a pretty awesome set, though, I will say.
It is pretty nice.
It is pretty nice. All right, we're going to jump into another dipper. Oh, by the way, your podcast came out.
Yep, this morning.
What's your topic this time? I hadn't seen it yet.
We talked about what you talked about yesterday with Laura Libby, the Maine cross-country dude who won the cross-country state championship. But I pretty much talked about how, Janet Mills is endorsing this. All of the people who are in her state, all the girls who work so hard to have the chance to win state championship were just robbed of it. But, I mean, she's fighting tooth and nail for them to continue to be robbed of it.
Exactly right.
So
weird.
It's like, it's not just, whatever. Like, she's actively fighting for it. So it was more of a long-winded rant yesterday was my podcast.
Yeah, and I look at it, too, and I think she's doing this on behalf of less than half of 1%, I guess, of her state. I mean, not even that much, probably.
I mean, the runner-up should have been the winner. The third place should have been runner-up. And for the rest of their life, they're going to think back about how the governor of their state fought for them to not be the winner when they should have been. So it's a mess. But anyways, yes, so that's what I talked about.
Thank you very much. And that podcast, by the way, is called Out of Right Field.
Yes.
That's a sports-based conservative commentary that JP does every single week, does an amazing job with it from right here in the Rightside studios. And we also, tomorrow, my latest edition of Right Philosophy comes out. Mine's going to be on activist judges. You're going to want to see that one. I name names. So yeah, activist judges, I specify why they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, who they are, and why we can see in their off-duty why they should have recused from the case in the first place. So all that's in Right Philosophy, and then we got all our other podcasts, all of it's on our website, rightsidemedia.org.
Hey, real quick before you get into your next dipper, we got a comment on Facebook in regards to your last topic. David Edwards says, great show. In 1973, we had over 800,000 soldiers and too many generals. Said we have 5 different PT tests, 9 and 73 and 94, one excluding the profile test. He said he had to run faster in 94 on the 2-mile run at 40 than the 73 standards. Says, I hope they come up with a good standard. I also hope they go back to soldiers really repairing equipment. It's David Edwards.
Soldiers really what? Repairing?
Repairing equipment.
How about that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not sending it off to contractors to be redone and sent back. There's a lot of things that soldiers used to do. You hardly ever see soldiers that are gate guards anymore. Like the MPs don't always guard the gate when you drive in the post. You don't often see soldiers who are cooks anymore. And I actually had I'm chasing a rabbit now.
Yeah, go ahead.
I actually had in my graduation class at Ranger School a cook. And we're like, "You're a cook, dude. What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm not a cook. I'm a combat spoon." We're like, combat spoon? Anyway, he was with the Ranger Regiment. He was a cook, and he did a great job. And so he earned the Order of Merit. There's meritocracy. Mm-hmm. He earned on the Order of Merit list the right to go to Ranger School and be a tabbed out cook. And I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't see cooks that are often, in uniform anymore. You see contractors on all this stuff. And I get it. That's part of the culture of the military is not just the green suiters. It's also the DOD civilians. But the DOD civilians have become a mafia in themselves in some ways. There's so many now that you look at it and go, then why do we even have an MOS that says cook? Because we use contract cook.
They're not actually,
Yeah. Anyway, a lot of thoughts. I got a lot of thoughts. I also know that I'm an old school guy. I'm from the Black Boot Army. I actually had to put kiwi on my boots and shine them to a high gloss. I actually wore BDUs, and before that, I had the pickle suits and even the olive drabs from Vietnam era that were starched. I mean, brother, when we put those things, we called it breaking starch. When you broke starch, you knew it. You had to push your arm through the sleeve, and you would hear it going through as it broke starch. But man, it looked good.
But like little stuff like that, the little details, I feel like a lot of that's. I mean, I'm not in the military, so I don't know from firsthand. But I feel like that got lost in the Biden administration of the little details and discipline, like you were talking about, whether it was beards or what was the one with the hands in their pockets that made it come back?
The Air Force. Yeah. The very first thing the chief of staff of the Air Force did was say, "It's okay now to put hands in pockets." Yeah. I'm like, what? That's your opening mantra? I've been waiting to be a general, so I let everybody put their hands in their pockets. Of course, in the Army, we did call those Air Force gloves.
But I mean, you lose track and care of the little details. That's going to show up on the battlefield, I would think. Whenever push comes to shove, I don't know. I feel like the little details go a long way.
You and I watched a video together of Admiral McRaven.
Yep.
Doing the make your bed speech.
Make your bed. Yep.
And he talked about the fact that you make your bed every single day. You go off and you have a day, it might be the worst day, but when you get home, you come home to a bed that's made because it's a self-discipline of starting your day right. And it's literally something no one's going to make you do. You just do. So anyway, I could go on like this all day long. But I do believe, and I get it, I'm old school, but I do believe that there's something missing now in the military that's never had to shine a boot because they don't. They've never had to press a uniform because they don't. They've been given the opportunity to relax the standards on fitness, on grooming. And and everybody out there knows who's been in uniform back in the old days, I'll say it, us old crusty guys, when we had starch fatigues in garrison, how many of you actually had to roll your sleeves up before you put the uniform on so they would look right? Because the Army had a set way of rolling your sleeves. You rolled them up to a certain point. You knew how many, after a while, you got to where you knew how many turns that was. It had to be above the elbow, but you had to have the cuff folded down over the cloth. Not like a Marine where you can see the inside. You had to fold it down so that it looked camouflage on the, anyway, all I'm saying is that seemed like a persnickety thing. Well, yeah, it actually was. And you know what? So is the cleaning of your weapon. Persnickety is what takes the hill later on.
You have pride in the little things.
Pride in the little things. Well, thank you for taking my diatribe and summing it up in one little sentence. You're right. Adam from Athens says, whenever I hear military cooks, I instantly go to Men of Honor, one of my favorite movies. We watched that together, too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Men of Honor, great movie. Became a Navy diver. That was a great movie. That's one of the few times that I could say now that I'll still watch something that has De Niro in it.
Yeah. Before he got woke.
Before he got crazy woke. Paul from Decatur says, hey, Colonel, Paul in Decatur, just caught the tail end of your dipper. I guess I was retired from the Alabama Guard Unit in Hamilton in November 2010. I turned 60. I was over a medical detachment, and then I could still pass the PT test at 60. My question is, why can't they use us as instructors? We can't jump anymore or hump 125-pound rucks or bust through the brush, but why not use us as instructors? Nope. They said you have to sit on the porch and growl. Well, you know what? There's something to be said for having graybeards around, Paul. And that kind of graybeard wisdom, it's kind of funny. When I first got downrange, when the war in Afghanistan was brand spanking new, I came in from the field because I was on a remote team. I came in from the field and I was at my headquarters, and I was eating real food, and there were these group of guys sitting around, and they all wore the same black golf shirt with a logo on it for their company, and every one of them looked like a salty old, operator. And I asked who these guys were, and I even talked to a few of them, and that's what they were. They called themselves the Graybeards. They were actually hired as contractors to go over and advise headquarters standing up in a war zone on what it was like to stand up in a war zone, because they'd been there. And I thought, well, there's a place for that.
Be afraid of the old guy that survives in a young man's world.
That's my quote. Yeah. All right. Did I break it all the way to a break with that? I ranted. All right. We're going to come back from this next break here in a minute, and I'm talking about immigration machinations. I don't know if you heard this, but we got some news on what's happening with getting illegal immigrants out of the country, like creative news. Like I look at it and go, ain't nobody got anything on the Trump administration for doing things in what I would call an overtly creative fashion. Like I think they just sit around and go, what's the craziest idea you can think of? Well, I don't know. How about this? And they go, well, that's cool. And they just do it. All right. We'll take a break right now. We'll come right back. I'll tell you all about it. Immigration Machinations. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. I tell you what, I got to get some text messages before I can move on. Let me grab those real quick. Matt from Madison. So I think what JP was describing is what we've always referred to as attention to detail, the smallest details.
Yep, I would agree.
There you go.
And I guess call me old school too, even though I'm 22 years old. But I mean, I just feel like, I don't know, all my coaches and mentors and like that is what they instill, like the little stuff when you go to the field, Matt like shows up. But I mean, in this case, it's the battlefield or whatever. But I don't know, I think it's important.
You're an old soul.
I guess I am.
TC from Priceville said, I was a staff sergeant in the Air Force back in the 90s, and I can tell you for a fact, when you have your hands in your pockets in your uniform, you were told, take off those Army gloves. Okay, you go there if you want to, but it was Air Force gloves as far as I know. Mike from Florence, Alabama says, the Biden administration created the CBP app so illegals could let them know they were coming. Trump changed it to the CBP homepage to let him know they were ready to take him up on the offer and go back home. I saw that. I also read today that the Trump administration changed the FHA, I guess that's the Federal Housing Allowance, so that illegals were not eligible for loans. Yep, Housing Administration, I mean. Biden has made it so as to welcome them to apply and made it easy for them to qualify. It's crazy. Basically, the Biden administration did everything intentionally they could to not only open the borders, but then to lure people to cross it. It's like, how many inducements can you provide? Lewis from Trinity back there on the Army stuff again. He says, I kept my black boots looking good and basic. It's hard to fill in those scrapes and holes sometimes, but they always shine. By the way, now I'm going to chase the rabbit again. Are you ready?
Yeah.
It's time to tell a story.
Yeah.
Can I tell a story?
Sure.
It's my radio show. Why not?
It is.
So I'm an old school paratrooper. All right, all of you old school paratroopers out there, how many of y'all remember the boot blacks? The boot blacks. That's what they were called. So every single day at airborne school, you're training to be a paratrooper, and the first thing you do is you fall out on the cables. They have cables on the ground. You line up. That's where you did your formation. And you'd have a morning inspection, right? You didn't wear your boots. Well, probably before me they did, but you actually carried your boots and you set them down next to you. And the black hats, the instructors, because they wore a black baseball cap with their silver jump wings on it, they would come down the line and inspect you. They would look for shaving, for haircut, for uniform, and they would look for boots. You had to pass. Okay, I got two stories. Dadgummit. First thing I'll say is this. There was a Marine Force Recon lieutenant behind me who was Mr. Gung-Ho. If you messed up on the inspection, if they found a gig, they called it. If they were gigging you on something, you had to go to a place called the gig pit.
The gig pit,
they would wear you out. So this Marine lieutenant behind me, every day he would always pass inspection because that's who he was. And then he would always go, permission to go to the gig pit? And they'd go, denied, because he was trying to be Mr. Gung-Ho, right? So this went on and on and on. I actually got gigged one day. They sent me to the gig pit. I loved it. It was the best workout I'd had the whole time I'd been there. So I volunteered to go back every day after that. But this lieutenant, it was driving him crazy. Permission to go to the gig pit? Denied, Lieutenant. Permission to go to the gig pit? No. And finally the last day, they come to inspect his boots. They go down, they look at his hair, look at his uniform, they go all the way down. There's his boots on the ground. He had taken white out and written gig pit on the toes of his boots. And they just looked at him and said, fall out, Lieutenant.
That's
Semper Fi, one for Chesty Puller. And he ran to the gig pit and did his thing.
Well, if everybody loves the gig pit, it's not much of a deterrence.
But, everybody didn't love the gig pit.
That's true.
But then there's the boot blacks. Why am I telling the story? Because I feel like it. That's why. The boot blacks. These were guys who because you didn't have much time. You get home, you get back from airborne school's training of the day. It's late. You're worn out. You just want to be done and eat chow and go to bed. Except you still got all the things you got to do as a military guy, and one of them was get your boots ready. They had these guys called the boot blacks, and you could take 2 pairs of boots with you. And every day you dropped off 1 pair, picked up the other pair, dropped off 1 pair, picked up the other pair, and they would have them shine, but they didn't really shine them. They painted them with this stuff that would bake on and shine like a highly gloss shined boot. At the end of airborne school, it was useless. They were cracking off. And you passed inspection every time. And the guys who didn't use the boot blacks, who said, I'm not spending $20 a week, man, no way. Well, they're making bank. I mean, you've got 300 airborne soldiers all paying $20, and all they're doing is slapping black stuff on there and laying them down. You come back and pick them up the next day. Huge scandal at Fort Benning. Turned out the black hats were getting kickbacks. The instructors were getting kickbacks from the boot blacks. If you didn't have boot black shine, you got gigged. And so then people would take their boots over there and get it done. And so huge scandal. The boot blacks had to go away. Everybody went back to Kiwi and do it yourself. All because somebody got greedy.
So were the boot blacks like an actual part of like the army, or is it just like this?
It was like contractors. It was like these guys who all of them were like old, retired, crusty E8s, and they stood out there and they'd say, all right, what do you got, airborne? All right, how long are you in for? What was your start date? Yesterday. Okay, you're here for 3 weeks, $20 a week. Pay cash. You pay cash. First pair of boots, lay right here. Here's your tag. All right, come back tomorrow. You come back tomorrow, they'd be sitting out there. They'd find your boots, hand them to you, go to formation.
And they were just putting paint on it. They weren't even shining.
They're painting shiny paint. I don't know what that stuff was.
That is crazy.
Meanwhile, they're also paying bribes to the black hats to make sure they made everybody use it.
That's crazy. That's a crazy story.
It was rather disconcerting.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to come back from the break here momentarily, and I got to tell you, this next dipper. Listen, I think it's going to give you encouragement. To be honest, I am. If I saw anything that how much did I see that frustrated me during the Biden years? A lot. You were with me, But if I saw anything that frustrated me more than everything else, maybe it was the southern border. Well, it's hard to say that because there were days when other things, but the southern border was like consistently awful. And illegal immigration was like a ransacking of our country. And all said and done, we are watching things happen right now that are going in such a way that when Trump said it during his State of the Union address a while back, he said, apparently you didn't need legislation, you just needed a new president. It has proven true. No one can say that we're not in a better place. The Democrats don't know how to address this because we've gone from 180,000 passing through the border illegally in February of last year to 8,000. Good Lord. And that's where we are. But I got some interesting things to show you about what's happening with that and where we're going with it next. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, hour number 3 coming up.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 3 on a Taco Tuesday. Well, apparently the boot black thing got some attention.
Yeah, we got a comment on that.
Reminds me of the Mountain Oysters conversation from yesterday.
Geez. No, please don't bring that back. I thought we left that in the past. Brad Smith commented on our X said, "Thank God for boot blacks."
Where is that, on X, you said?
Yeah, on X.
X drive stream? Yeah. So that's the way I felt, though. Maybe it's $25. Yeah, it may have been $25, $5 a day, because we didn't have to train on the weekends. Steve from Huntsville says, "Colonel, I have melted my weight in kiwi." Do you know what that means?
What, did he melt the kiwi to shine the?
There you go.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. You could melt it, and then it would spread on easier and get in all the cracks and crevices and shine it right up. And by the way, just so you know, don't just polish the toes. No. We used to always say a toe shine's a no shine, a heel shine that's a real shine.
A heel shine. Wow.
If you're shiny on the heels, that means you put extra time into it. Jim from Huntsville says, "Hey, Phil, I don't know what the boot black stuff was called when you served, but when I served 82 to 94 in the Army, a lot of people used what was called penny shine. I don't know that stuff, penny shine. I was in that time frame. I got in 87. JT from Madison says it's called leather luster. Leather luster. It must have come in buckets because they use paintbrushes to put it on. I mean, I don't know where they got this industrial-sized buckets of leather luster, but my gosh.
Well, I find it funny. They weren't even hiding the fact that they were just putting paint on it.
No, they weren't. John from Lexington. By the way, it was kind of weird too. If there's a lot of it's Fort Benning, Georgia. It's humid. If there's too much moisture in the air, the leather luster would get a purplish haze to it.
So was it purple boots?
Yes, yeah. And then last one before I go to the next topic. John from Lexington, South Carolina says, "While stationed in Panama, Carlos the boot man gave me the best spit shine at $10 a month. He also provided the best intel on alerts for the field." He shined USARSO Southcom CG's boots also. That's hilarious. So if the USARSO Southcom CG knew something, he told the boot guy, and the boot guy told everybody else. That's hilarious. All right, listen, we're going to jump on into the next topic. So immigration machinations, that's where we are. I hold in my calloused former paratrooper hands an article from the New York Post. I love creativity. I love me some creativity. I'm talking about get out there, get real, get jiggy with it, do something different. Here you go. The Trump admin is set to pay illegal immigrants $1,000 to self-deport. Do you hear that?
It's genius.
That is genius. Here, listen to these numbers. Story in the New York Post, Dateline yesterday. Apparently, studies show that it costs the taxpayers an average of $17,121 for the feds to have to go arrest, detain, and then deport a single illegal immigrant. So why not just say, hey, if y'all will come in, we'll give you $1,000 and a plane ticket and we'll send you home. This is real, by the way. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem said, self-deportation is the best, safest, most cost-effective way for illegal immigrants. And she said, download the CBP app today and self-deport. They'll actually pay you $1,000 and even get you there. So how about we repatriate you and give you a little folding money to take with you?
You know what? I bet you a good amount of people will take up that offer.
I wonder. I mean, some of them are so skittish. You know, they believe that everything is a trap to lure them in. Right? So there will be some who don't. I think there are some who are looking for a way to get back home and don't know how to do it. And they're worried about getting deported, and they're looking at, if I'm going to go home anyway, how about going home with $1,000 American dollars and a chance to get back to where, you know, everybody speaks my language and this is where I grew up. So that's, I just saw that and thought, that's a great way to kick off the discussion about illegal immigration.
Well, somebody mentioned earlier the CBP app was used under the Biden administration to bring in illegals, and now Trump's using it to pay illegals to get out of here.
Why not? It's our app. Let's just use it.
How different things can get with a new president.
So I got a piece here from FAIR US. That's Foundation for American Immigration Reform. House committees are moving forward with billions in immigration funding. So last week, this is Dateline yesterday. Last week, the House Homeland Security and Judiciary Committees advanced pieces of the reconciliation package, providing billions more in federal funding to enforce our immigration laws. So if you're not familiar, one of the holdups has been the Democrats did not want us to have a bill that gave additional funding to immigration reform. They didn't. They want to pretend that they don't have to. Well, the border was secure, right? What else you got? But the new border legislation is coming through the committee process, and they are upfunding the ability to secure the border, and not just a little bit. $46.5 billion for border barriers, including new border walls, 900 miles of river barriers. Remember the river barriers that Texas put in? The Texas got sued by the Biden administration for daring to put a river barrier in.
Yeah.
All it was a floating bunch of balls on a rope, and they said no.
And the Texas National Guard was just defending their own state borders. So, it was completely asinine.
$5 billion for new Customs and Border Protection facilities, $4.1 billion for hiring additional 3,000 new Border Patrol agents and 5,000 new Office of Field Operations officers at the ports of entry. $2 billion for retention bonuses to keep CBP personnel from retiring. Love that. $2.7 billion for more border surveillance technology. You know, here's the thing. Let's say, God forbid, the Democrats win the next presidential election. If all this stuff was put in place, if we had new walls, new surveillance technology, military capabilities on the border, would they go in there and just dismantle it, do you think?
You know what? I think it depends on who it is, but I feel like the state of the Democratic Party right now, yes. Because you're talking about an administration that the last Democratic administration, they sued a state for protecting the border.
They did.
So, like, if they're willing to do that,
constantly,
I feel like they would actively dismantle all this stuff. Yes.
I think Texas just stayed in litigation with the Biden administration. They've got a ton of stuff in here for the Department of Justice to process immigration-related crimes. They got $500 million to the DOJ for combating drug trafficking, including fentanyl. They got $3 billion to the Office of Refugee Resettlement for housing. Listen, the whole thing is what we're looking at right now is an FY26 budget that is going through what's called the regular order of business. The regular order, meaning they're actually processing it through committee. It's not Schumer sitting in a back room talking to Nancy, figuring out what they want to do and they'll allow to happen. It's the committees doing their jobs, formatting out agreed upon framework for spending, recognizing that the priority is securing the border. The two places where they're willing to spend more money in the Trump administration right now are in defense and border security. And they're not playing. And so I think the big beautiful bill is going to include this stuff in it, that reconciliation bill they call it. And I'm for it. All right, in the you can't make this stuff up category. Holy cow. Have you seen the interview that CNN did with the Sinaloa cartel guy?
I did not.
Okay.
Oh, I think I may have seen a clip, but yes, continue.
So, yes. I've got a piece here from the Populous Times that is flat out calls CNN a far-left media outlet. But they actually did one of those interviews where the person is kind of masked.
Yeah.
In this case, they really were. They had large sunglasses, a hat, and they had a balaclava pulled up over their face, and they were still shadowed so you couldn't see them. They changed their voice. Mm-hmm. They did this whole thing, and they wanted to ask the Sinaloa cartel guy, how do you feel about being called a terrorist organization by the Trump administration? How do you feel? It's a cartel guy.
That shows all, I think, from CNN.
So CNN reporter Isabel Young looked at the masked and kind of half-hidden cartel guy who's allegedly from the Sinaloa cartel, one of the most violent cartels. Mayhem on the border is in their middle name. She says, according to the Trump administration, you're a terrorist. The cartels have been labeled a foreign terrorist organization. What do you make of that? And then he just goes, well, the situation's ugly, but we got to eat. That's what he said. He didn't say, we're not terrorists. He said, well, it's an ugly world out there, but we got to eat. That's his response.
I think I saw another clip too where he actually said he respects Trump for what he's doing. This is like business to them.
And that's where I was going next.
Yeah.
It is business. And you know what? They also recognize strength. She said, well, what's your message to Donald Trump? This is CNN interviewing a friggin' Sinaloa cartel guy. What's your message to Donald Trump if he's watching this? If he's watching this, what would you say to him? Anyway, surprisingly, he said, my respect. He said, according to him, he's looking out for his people. The problem is the consumers. If there weren't that many American consumers, we would stop. When asked if he was remorseful, that people were dying on a daily basis, he goes, well, of course, things are sad, but things are sad. So I want to know, how does CNN feel, how do they feel about the fact that they just basically ingratiated themselves to a designated terrorist, drug trafficking, Sinaloa cartel thug, and they didn't get the answers they wanted?
I feel like today's CNN would have asked Osama bin Laden how he felt being oppressed by the Bush administration. Like, that is the state that they're at right now. It's embarrassing.
I look at that and think, how do you go back to work the next day, CNN people? How do you go back to work and go, we are so proud of the report we did where we asked the Sinaloa cartel guy about his feelings? And the guy didn't blink. He just goes, yeah, got to respect it. My respect. He's doing what he's got to do. We got to eat. Okay. Guess what? We got to drop a JDAM on your head too. How about that? All right, take me to a break, JP. We'll take that break. We'll come right back. I got some more immigration machinations. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just, I mean, like, man, giving you all the truth you can slap on a bumper sticker. So, Daily Wire has a piece that I think is great. So this is also, by the way, Dateline yesterday. Daily Wire, exclusive. Trump makes a move to supercharge deportations using local cops. Okay, you may have heard about the 287G program that basically it's part of a statute that allows the Trump administration or any presidential administration to enter into a agreement with local and state authorities to enhance their capabilities. Because basically a local cop doesn't have federal jurisdictions. And even a state cop doesn't have local jurisdiction or federal jurisdictions. Under a 287G agreement, they do. The memo lays out that DHS has now signed 562 agreements with state and local law enforcement. 562 across the nation. And keep in mind, some of our states are still sanctuary states, so there's whole states that didn't do this. We still have 562 of them. That's a 316% increase over what was signed during the entire 4 years of the Biden administration. I mean, picture that. That's epic. So what we're looking at right now is, well, I'll tell you what, the statement from Homeland Security says, since January 20th, our partnerships with state and local law enforcement have led to over 1,100 arrests of dangerous criminal illegal aliens. ICE has also trained over 5,000 officers across the country to help track them down and arrest these criminal illegal aliens in their communities. I mean, we just had like Operation, what was it called? Operation Tidal Wave in Florida, a week or so ago, where they just went in and just swept the state and arrested over 800 in one day.
That's the perfect name for it, by the way.
It is a perfect name. I like it. Makes me glad all over. But that is just like way cool. What I'm telling you here, folks, is like there's no stone being left unturned. And while I want to see more of them gone, what I am seeing is they are being gone quicker than we could have really imagined. And by the way, separate story, justthenews.com, Trump says he is not lifting the emergency declaration on the southern border. That gives him, by the way, the ability to do things. The emergency declaration is a true legal standing that gives him the ability to do things, spend monies, take certain actions, and do it all with a more expedited manner without having to go through, all kinds of bureaucratic layers. So he's not lifting that. And what I also love, and I'll do this right before the break, what I also love is this. Well, which one do I want first? Two of them here. One of them is, you heard me talk about it, he has set up a new military enforcement zone. We've been talking about the fact that apparently there's a strip of land. I didn't know this. I've never heard this before. This is fascinating to me. There's a strip of land called the Roosevelt Reservation that runs from California down through New Mexico, Arizona, and into Texas. This strip of land is only 60 feet wide on the border. It basically is like an easement. Like if you had an easement for sidewalks or an easement for utilities or something, this is like a federal easement. Well, Trump decided, you know what? I'm turning that over to the Department of Defense. It's now DOD land. So they're setting up stations. And in Texas, they just established a new one. It's considered to be an extension of Fort Bliss. It follows the creation of the first one they did in New Mexico. So they're taking whole swaths of this and they're turning them into military zones, which gives them the ability then to let the U.S. military operate without having to be deputized to work with Customs and Border Patrol. Very cool.
I was going to bring that up when you were talking about the creative. Yeah, that is like they're actively looking for creative ways to get this expedited.
Somewhere there's a crazy whiteboard in the in the immigration discussions. Like, what about this? Hey, write it up there. Let's keep that going. Yeah. Well, what about this one? Oh, I like that. Write it on the board. And they're just spitballing this stuff. And listen, it's working.
And Trump is crazy enough to do it.
Yes, he is.
In a good way.
Last one I've got for the break. I pulled this off of Woke Spy. Y'all, if you don't think for a second that the Trump administration is not actively engaged in immigration, woo! Woke Spy, Dateline 4 days ago. President Donald Trump signed 2 executive orders aimed at reinforcing law enforcement targets and targeting jurisdictions that obstruct federal immigration. So what he's saying is, hey, sanctuary cities, your days are numbered. He basically is not playing. We're not going to do this. We got one executive order to strengthen law enforcement. We got another executive order to protect American communities by directing the Attorney General and the Secretary of Homeland Security to publish a list of state and local jurisdictions that obstruct the enforcement. What are they doing there? They're basically doxing cities. So if you're saying, well, we're just going to quietly say that we won't enforce that. Okay, it's not going to be too quiet because we're going to post it. And anybody who's looking to move to your city may look at that list and go, oh, shoot, we're not going there. Businesses, individuals, contractors, construction, I don't know. Maybe it would behoove you to actually not do what over 77 million people in the nation voted to have. Just saying. Just saying. Wow. It's like halfway through hour number 3, and I just did 2 dippers.
But they were meaty.
When we get back to this break, I've got one. I'm calling it Say It Like It Is. Saying it like it is. I got some sound clips you're going to want to hear, because to me, they are literally people saying it like it is, calling things like they are, and I'm loving it. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Whew. It goes from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga, from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden, all the way down to that lovely little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the border from there to what we now get to call, once again, Fort Benning. How fast can I say that? And oh, by the way, big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. And oh, by the way, that's just the radio. The online presence has a bunch of y'all streaming the show and watching online, and we appreciate it more than you could possibly know. Before I jump into my sound bites that I want to play, let me get on the phone with Jeff Rowe from Indiana, who is a soundbite in himself. Hey, man, how are you?
I'm doing real good. I'm through Nashville and headed toward Kentucky.
Man, you're making good time today. That's great.
Yeah, I wish it'd be like this every day.
I know you do. There have been more than once you've called me and you're still waiting on a load. But
oh yeah, you never know.
Well, what do you think about all this stuff, man? I talked about the military and I talked about immigration. What are you thinking?
On the immigration thing?
Yeah.
No matter how much border wall and river barriers we put up and everything, we need to have something permanent, so that the next administration can't do a Biden and just open the gates and cut holes in the fence and say, come on in, people, and we're just going to have the same problem we're going through again. That we have to have some kind of something that makes them, if they come into this country illegally, they either get sent back immediately or they put into an internment camp so that until they can be adjudicated if they want to be.
I like how you think. I've seen, and I'm trying to think which country it was. Maybe it's Hungary, that actually on their border, the border guards are allowed to turn people around. Like they don't have to process them and then give them they literally say, "Why are you here?" "Well, we wanted to come over." "Nope," and they push them back across the gate and lock the gate behind them, and they're allowed to do that.
Yeah, and that's what we need to do here. This asylum claim stuff is got to end too. It's like if you want asylum, you have to either go to our embassy in the country you're in, or go through the gates, the entry, whatever they call them, the entry zones or whatever, and make your claim there, and it should be adjudicated, whether you're lying or whether you're telling the truth or whatever, according to how things are going. You can't just say, well, I've got like this one guy, I'm a gang. I'm in a rival gang, and the gangs are after me. Well, don't be in a gang. Sorry, bye.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what it reminds me of? Remember back during COVID when all you had to do was say, "I'm scared of COVID," and they would say, "Okay, stay at home, and we'll pay you extra just to stay home." And people were making more money by staying at home because they were basically given free stuff, and so people quit going to work, not because they were really scared, but because they were told if you said scared, you got money. And it ruined whole businesses because of it.
Oh, I know. I wish I could have got in on some of that. It's like, well, I don't care how scared you are. You're out there by yourself. Go on. We can need these loads delivered.
Yeah, no doubt.
It wasn't nothing like that for me. And another thing, they're talking about stuff like that. These whenever the FAA when the radars went down the other day and everything, they're going to give these people for being scared or whatever a month and a half of being off work because they were traumatized, supposedly.
Yeah.
You've seen what I sent you the pictures of what I went through.
Yeah.
And I was pretty darn traumatized, and I didn't get no month and a half off. I was back in the saddle and then as soon as they could get a truck going for me again, which was about a week.
You sent me those pictures, and I remember thinking the same thing. I thought, my gosh, he's going to be out for a while. Nope, he was on the road like before I knew it.
Yeah.
Well,
it's pretty rough.
it's something to watch. But I'll tell you, it's amazing to me, though, how much of a difference a change of administration has made on a border that was so out of control that as much as I believe that Trump could bring some change, I don't think anybody believed it was going to be as quick and as solid as it's been. Did you? Did you think the southern border was going to just like shut off the tap?
Well, yeah, when Trump got in there, I figured it would because, like I say, they opened it up intentionally. You know, they said, you know, I still don't see how they don't, what was the Director of Homeland Security?
Mayorkas?
Mayorkas, yeah. Mayorkas, yeah.
Yeah.
I still don't see how, you know, he should have been run out on a rail somehow or another. Even when he was serving, I can't believe they couldn't impeach him. You know, with that much evidence,
He's one of the few. He's one of the few
laws.
You're not seeing anywhere. You know, some of them start to trickle back out into the limelight now. He's one of the few that is like nowhere to be seen because it's real obvious he didn't have anything going on.
And I can't believe Fauci hasn't been picked up by some other country, you know, for doing what he did. You know, he might be exonerated. You know, might be immune for prosecution in this country, but. I would think, you know, they would, you know, some other country like Israel would pick him up and take him and try him somewhere.
We may find we may find that one day he's no longer around. I don't know, but I think that you're going to wind up seeing some DOJ action about him for too much longer. I really do. I think that's going to be a thing. I saw this is a change of subject, and I got to go in a second, but that Trump's already issued a no more. What's it called? Gain of function research at all. No more, period. Banned. Yeah. I'm sure that some experts are screaming about it, but you know what? I think that's part of what got us where we are.
Yeah, it's what's got to happen. If you don't start holding people accountable, no matter what, you know, how they escape justice, it needs to be done because otherwise it will keep continuing on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Listen, be careful on the road. I'm going to get a few things done here before we hit the top of the hour, and we'll talk to you tomorrow, all right?
Have a good one, Phil.
See you, buddy.
See ya.
I tell you what, we got time. Let me do this. I'm going to go into this little bit I've got on, I'm calling it the third dipper. I'm just calling it Say It Like It Is. I am loving straight talk. By the way, any of you military folks and you're on Twitter, you need to follow a guy who goes by the name Infantry Dort, D-O-R-T, Infantry Dort. That guy is wearing people out with some of the best writing I have ever seen. He's just called out retired Major General Patrick Donahue on Twitter. I'm reading it and thinking, that's one of those when I read it, I wish I'd said it. It's epic. But so he says it like it is, and he doesn't play. He didn't mince words. I think he's actually still on active duty now, still saying stuff. But then there's people like Los Angeles Sheriff Alex Villanueva, who has just decided I am no longer able to say Democrat is where I want to be. I can't do it. Now, I don't know where he stands on all the issues. It's like my monologue earlier. I don't know where he is on everything, but I do know this. To hear him talk, he sees what we see, and he knows who he's not going to be a part of anymore. He's saying it like it is. You got sound clip number 2? Go ahead and play it.
As of today, and if you have cameras, get them rolling. Share this on social media. As of today, I'm leaving the party of paid protests, purple hair, and pronouns.
Pause it right there. Pause it right there. If you didn't hear it, what he said was, as of today, he told people, get ready, you're about to film something. He said, as of today, I'm leaving the party of protests, purple hair, and pronouns. Keep playing.
I'm joining the party of faith, family, and freedom.
That's a great clip. You could tell, by the way, somebody was recording it on their phone. But he was standing up in front of a large crowd, and I love the fact, he's telling it like it is. He's not mincing any words. He says flat out, I am leaving the party. After all these years, I am leaving the party of protests, purple hair, and pronouns, and I'm joining the party of faith, freedom, and I forgot what the last part was, but it was good. faith, family, and freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Faith, family, and freedom. That's just, listen, I think there's a lot of folks out there who have been stuck in a position where because of their jobs or whatever else, they couldn't say it, but they go behind the curtain to vote and they do not vote Democrat. And on the outside, people are like, oh, I think that guy's a Democrat. You ain't voting that way. Because they're sick of it. They're watching stuff. They're like, that makes absolutely no sense. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, can we take him in after all these years?
I think so. I mean, like what you said in your monologue, it's the way that we won this last election were these old Democrats that came over to our side. And I'm not saying you should blindly trust anybody, but I think that's how we win with this new Democratic Party. I think they're digging their own grave, and the people that want to come to our side, like, we got to welcome them in because that's how we win. However, we have to make sure to keep our conservative principles, not to just become this populist party that's not identical or looks anything like we want it to. But yes, I think that's how we win, welcoming in these old Democrats. If they want to get off the sinking ship, come over to the winning side.
And you can have standards, by the way. I mean, the parties, if you want to run as a candidate in the party, you're going to have to meet the bylaws. And like in Alabama, the state bylaws say if you have in the last 6 years, which will get you through 2 election cycles, if you have through the last 6 years supported a Democrat, given money to a Democrat, or openly advocated for a Democrat, you cannot run as a Republican. That's okay. That's a standard. Every business has standards for people to come in. You can't, no shirt, no shoes, no service. You can have standards. Same is true for joining the party. It doesn't mean you can't vote, and I think we're starting to see people basically voting their way right out of the Democrat Party.
Yeah, I think, like I said, that's how we win. We got to accept all the people who are wanting to leave the sinking ship of the Democratic Party. I
agree. We'll take a break right now. When we come back, I've got one more sound clip for you. I had several, but I'm going to go ahead with one more from Trump. You guys are going to like it. He just basically puts the press in their place once again. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, saying it like it is. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. By the way, if you want to check it out, go to rightside.media.org and you can buy T-shirts, hats, coffee mugs, and even our Rightside Bulletproof Influence highball glasses. They do. They have an embedded bullet in the side of the glass. It's very cool. And it says Rightside Media Bulletproof Influence engraved in the glass. So yeah, check them all out at rightside.media.org. You can buy merch. We got stuff. We got merch. So get your Rightside Radio coffee mugs, your T-shirts, whatever the case may be. Check it all out. rightside.media.org. I got one more clip I want to do. I had several, but I'm gonna take this one. I'll tell you what one of them was that we're not going to play because it's time. Attorney General Pam Bondi doing an interview on Fox, calling out China direct and saying China is the reason why fentanyl keeps making it into the United States. Because every bit of it goes through Mexico, yes, but it originates in China. And she was not playing. So saying it like it is, not afraid to call out China for what they're doing. But then there's this. So Trump did an interview, apparently, was it yesterday maybe? Or a day before, yesterday? With Meet the Press's Kristen Welker again. I don't know why he keeps... Anyway, you know what? I guess on the one hand, I do admire the fact that he's doing these interviews with people that just can't stand him. She is the most combative. She's always been rude. She always looks like she's been sucking lemons, and she, you know, is just doling things out to him like. And he finally he'd had it. He's telling it like it is. I got a sound clip. Listen to this.
The media is so fake, including, like even the way you ask questions. Every question is asked in a negative vein. There's a toy company that took a toddler's, whatever, but you don't talk about the fact that gasoline is down at numbers that nobody believes possible. You know why they're down, by the way? Drill, baby, drill. We're drilling like crazy right now.
We try to make sure every question is fair, Mr. President.
Look, every question you ask says a very negative slant.
No, but look, I'm just curious.
I'm fine for responding to you. I don't think you're very difficult at all to respond to be honest with you. But you know what? You should ask some positive things like, sir, it's amazing what you've done with gasoline. Because you know what? Gasoline's big business. A stroller is not big business.
Not even playing. I don't know if you caught it jumped in, but he basically started off by saying the mainstream media is so fake. And then he took her to task for the fact, by the way, that clip did not make the final edit. I don't know how we got it, but there were several edits that were left on the floor basically, and that was one of there were two or three in this article that I pulled. Where did I pull the article from? Hang on a second. Daily Wire. The media is so fake. Trump jabs at Welker and Nancy Pelosi in unaired Meet the Press clips. I don't know where they got them, but the end result is we're looking at Trump just saying it like it is. And he called out Nancy Pelosi, he called out fake news, and they didn't run those clips. Go figure.
Funny how that works.
I guess they'll get a award for editing.
Yeah. I like Kristen Walker told a good joke of they try to make sure every question is fair. It's not true.
He's saying that was comedy.
Yes, that was a joke. Obviously not. Because anytime he calls it out, they quickly try to deflect and go, but what about this? And they then never want to talk about it. They always try to deflect.
Yeah. Yellow Dog Mike has his own opinions. It's got nothing to do with anything we're talking about.
When does it ever have anything to do with what we're talking about?
You know what? I'm not even sure this is worth reading. No. Yellow Dog, I think you just go to like the Daily Beast and Mother Jones, and you pull every soundbite you can and put it into one text at a time. Come back to us, man. Come back to the light. Dave from Capshaw sending me a meme of, what is it? Democrats offer illegal immigrants $1,001 to stay in the U.S. What? Are they bidding now? Oh, to stay in the U.S. Oh, yeah. Now I see it. Okay. Yeah, okay. It's a bidding war. John from Lexington, South Carolina says there are liberal and conservative Republicans. There are only liberal Democrats. Okay. I can see that. Jeff from Indiana, again, he says, Phil, what that guy just said about changing parties, that's Alex Villanueva. He said that ought to be put on a bumper sticker for sure, if not a shirt. It's true. Leaving behind the party of protest, purple hair, and pronouns. And then Badger from Athens says, should we be worried or weary about party swappers? Possible infiltration tactic. Well, I listen, I totally agree. And I think you have to watch it. Politics is cyclical. There have to be standards. I would not be a bit surprised to find out the Democrat Party splits because they've gotten so progressive on the far left that at some point they become two parties. It's like watching the Methodist Church right now. You know? Did I go there? I'm sorry, I did.
Well, yeah, we'll save it for another time.
It's real. It's real. I'm just saying. I'm saying it like it is.
Unfortunately, yes.
But yeah, there's a whole lot there with regards to people swapping parties. The question is not whether they want to align themselves. The question is whether they want to run as a candidate. That's the difference. If you see somebody wanting to run as a candidate, then you've got to have tight bylaws in your local and state committees to make sure that no one can just jump in right after running as a Democrat last year. There will be party switchers, and they need to be approved. But when it comes to things like just saying, I'm tired of being a Democrat, I want to start voting Republican, I say let them have it. And recognize, like I said earlier, Badger in my monologue, I'd rather have an 80% friend than a 0% enemy. All right? Or maybe it's 100% enemy. But anyway,
I got what you meant by that.
Okay.
Yeah, all good.
But the truth of the matter is 80% friend beats 100% enemy any day of the week. All right, you guys. Y'all are an amazing audience. We love you. You're the reason why we do what we do. And we will be here tomorrow. Don't forget, Wednesdays is the day of the Grand Council. In the meantime, do not ever forget there's more of us than there are them. God is still on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.